there was a time when 70s, time to call it quits. There are certain parts of the world that they don't do colonoscopies after the age of 75. Did you know that?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain. I'm Callie and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Partha Nandi. He's a gastroenterologist. And today, Partha, we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease. And literally even saying it out loud makes me want to cry. So, Alzheimer's disease affects a lot of lives. And I just think it's one of those just real soul-crushing illnesses on families. So let's just start by chatting about what it is and what we need to know.
Yeah, it's devastating. It's an epidemic. To me, it's a worldwide epidemic. First of all, it's to be in our part of the world, North America, but now it's worldwide. I'll tell you, I think the best example is one of my patients. I write about him in my book, Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain, and his name was Mark. And Mark is a guy, and I may have even told you about him in passing over the years. He's a guy who was always well put together. He was a high school principal in this giant school of 1,300 students. And he would always come in, the shirt was ironed, no hair was out of place, and always greet me, Dr. Nandi. This is, how it's going. And he had a condition called GERD, irritable bowel syndrome. And every time, the parents called him about something crazy or the students went nuts, it would affect him.
Tell those funny stories.
Yeah, it is. But also stress would really, the stress of, because parents call you about, it's not Johnny's fault. Mm-hmm.
That's
it's your fault, Mark. That's right. And your teachers, and they're terrible.
He said he should have gotten all A's.
Yeah, how come he's not getting all A's? Yeah. He's brilliant.
Right.
Like the rest of our family. So, I'm being a little facetious, but he would come in to see me, but he would always be like completely sharp, super sharp. Yeah. And then started, you could see little chinks in the armor. His shirt was kind of not pressed. His hair was out of place. And one day I sat down with him in one of his visits, and he told me that he was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. Otherwise, extremely well.
It's interesting that he even knew. Did he come in with his spouse or?
No, he always came in alone. But I asked him, I said, is everything okay?
Something.
Well, it's a change. Yeah. Listen, if he was a guy who was always untucked and hair is all messed up, I wouldn't say anything. But this guy was he was old school, very much. It's probably early 60s, right? And I said, what's going on? And he told me he had early Alzheimer's. And I bring up that example, Cal, because this is what happens. Yeah. You're healthy otherwise, right? You're living a fulfilling life, and then
And how old was he?
Early 60s. I can't remember exactly, maybe 62, 63. But he is the example. That's the age. You're having a patient come in with those kind of symptoms. So late middle age, older 60s, 70s, you're getting these folks that are coming in.
I feel like 60 is just too young.
It is, but this is what's happening now. And we're getting younger and younger as some of these diseases, but typically that's the time. And it is the most common form of dementia. We talked about this earlier in one of our episodes. If you guys were watching or listening, every 3 seconds, someone's diagnosed with dementia. Every 6 seconds, someone's diagnosed, like Mark, with Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. So folks often ask me, so is it dementia or is it Alzheimer's? And the idea is that Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. It's really important to understand that there's lots of types of dementia that are maybe not Alzheimer's. Maybe it's from, a toxin, or maybe it's a different type of what we call etiology. But Alzheimer's is the most common type. And it's so important. And like Mark, it can affect the part of the brain that involves thinking, memory, processing. So you may forget some of the things that you're doing even a few minutes ago, and you're processing changes. And so why are we talking about it, right? It can really affect, and you asked me this and we were talking about this. So what gives, right? And why is it important for gut health? And I think it's important to talk about that. And even with some of our close family members, we talked about that.
I can really relate to Mark and his family because Alzheimer's disease has really affected our family. My father's mother passed away at 63, Ella, and it was devastating to watch. And it was similar to Mark. Like my grandmother was over for one Sunday afternoon, and she was wearing a small hoop earring on her finger, like a ring. And we started to notice she put carrots in the tuna fish, like just little odd things that were not her typical behavior. And so, as I had mentioned in the first episode, we're seeing these same things with her son, my dad, and it is soul crushing.
Can I just interrupt 1 second? I think it's even more bothersome because the person and the subtle changes, but you go to doctors. This is no knock on some of my colleagues, but the problem is they go, well,
they even do the testing and they say there's no memory problems. No
but
memory
there
problems.
Is. There is.
No, there's definitely. Something. This man was reading a million books. He's very witty. He's the first to get every joke. He was into advertising, super clever. He would come and speak to my classes about, how do marketing and, just pizza. Oh yeah, that's Little Caesars. Or, where's the beef? Oh, that's Wendy's. He was so clever.
Even during the time that we've been married, he would write the best cards. So, we would always get these cards, and he had amazing handwriting, right?
Yes.
And then he would write incredibly well thought out sentences and paragraphs every single time. And it was phenomenal.
Brilliant with
First thing happened was that, they weren't quite as well put together. Then the handwriting changed. It's not always characteristic of this disease, but in other diseases, you can have handwriting changes and you can have smaller writing, but you saw it. And then now what happens is, he doesn't even write, or if he writes, it's very little. It's
such a departure for his personality because he's such a deep lover that one of the ways he really shows his love and affection is in these beautiful notes. When I was a kid, he would go on, he would travel and he would write sticky notes every time I left. And it wasn't just love you, honey, have a great day. It was compliment someone today. You can really change someone's life, or, it's really hard. It's really hard to lose someone like that. And the thing is that we're all gonna get there. But to lose your mental health and not be able to remember, he's remembering us right now, but I think the fear is one day he's not going to remember who we are. And
when he's stressed, though, sometimes he forgets.
Confused.
He forgets. And so for us, if you're watching and hearing, this is deeply personal to us.
Yes.
Because, it's one thing, let's talk about something and, it's like an abstract or somebody else. And a lot of you are watching and hearing, this affects so many folks. It's either affecting someone immediately in your family or someone who's impacted. Everybody's impacted by this. That's why we're talking about it.
So when we were taking my dad in for testing, I felt like the doctors didn't really know what was going on. And so because they couldn't test for the symptoms, even the scans came back. What is going on when you're starting these slow process of decline?
It's kind of a mystery for a lot of people because they don't quite understand what Alzheimer's is. Alzheimer's is what happens is, in your brain, you have these signs of inflammation. We call them amyloid plaques, neurofibrillary tangles. So you're essentially having all of this inflammation and stuff that's happening from that inflammation that then cause the brain cells there to die and not communicate well. So in the brain itself, the neurons are not they're kind of off. Like if you're watching, instead of doing this, they're off like this. There's almost the equivalent of scar tissue. Let's just call it that, from inflammation that's happening. And inflammation is okay, right? It protects us. But when it's unabated or it's unopposed and it's not needed, it can destroy an organ, and that's what happens. And when you have these amyloid plaques and these neurofibrillary tangles in the brain, then your thinking is changed. And you talked about, I think, your grandma, putting a earring on her finger or putting the wrong ingredients that you would never do. It's changes in the processing of a higher thought. So how do you then put this with that, and how do you then connect them together? So processing of thoughts are altered or almost destroyed. Your memory is altered, right? Especially recent memories, meaning that you're doing something, you go, shoot, what did I do? When you are having that happen often, constantly, and you're constantly trying to figure out what am I doing this for, or what did I just do, and what was the process that happened. So recent memories altered, processing is altered, and then as you get
More.
progressive, you even start to forget very important things like who your family members are, right? You don't recognize them. You don't recognize your own mom. You don't recognize your kids. You don't recognize your spouse. And that's when you get more severe. But it really stems from your brain and cells in your brain dying because of this inflammatory process. We used to not know, by the way, that it's an inflammatory process. We just thought it just happened. But now we know that the unopposed inflammation is causing that. If there is a positive to this, is that now we know that there's a connection to gut health.
Yeah.
And so I write about it in our new book, Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain. And what I talk about is that when you have the gut and how intimately it's connected with the brain, right? No, we talked about the brain and the gut are like two teenagers that are at a Taylor Swift concert, or they're
Texting
going to
each
go to
other.
the Taylor Swift
Yeah.
concert, like constantly
good.
communicating.
You made a joke, made me stop crying.
I have to, because I know it's tough.
Yeah,
I know it's
thank
tough.
you.
But I think that they're communicating all the time. So how does this relate to Alzheimer's? Well, we now know research that showed this is research with mice, and I've talked to you about this, where they took mice and they genetically modified them so that they have the kind of microbiome and gut that someone with Alzheimer's may have.
Wow.
And what they found out is that these mice now produce products that can then stimulate brain inflammation and some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's. That's super critical to
Wow.
understand. It's not just this theoretical, well, maybe. Now we're finding that there's actually an Alzheimer's gut. We actually call it that. So that means that the microbiome, the trillion member army
Yes.
that's in your gut, there's almost a signature type. It's not 100% that every single person with Alzheimer's have it, but we're seeing patterns.
And this is what we're seeing too, like my grandmother and father and the family history, because the microbiome. Talk to us about that.
That's a good question. So you're talking about genetics.
Well, right,
and
but
microbiome.
I'm saying which is which.
Well,
maybe
they
it's a
work with
little
each
bit
other.
the same.
So I think that I talk about it almost as a two-hit hypothesis. Let's say your genetics predispose you, set you up, right? Set you up for it. And the microbiome is the second punch. The beautiful thing is that if you have a genetic predisposition, right? If any of you are watching, if your family members have Alzheimer's, then you can change that other factor, your gut health.
Your gut.
That's what we're talking about, right? So how is it that we talked about the experiment and the research about the mice? It increases the products that can simulate or look like Alzheimer's. It can increase inflammation of your brain. So how does it do that? And I think we alluded to that, right? So if you're watching, this is the gut wall barrier. On one side is stool and another side is blood. There's one cell layer thick between poop and blood.
It's nuts.
Right? So you have to really be very strong. We call this the border patrol. We call this gut wall integrity. So when you have the wrong set of microbiome, if you have the wrong set of what we call pro-inflammatory bugs, that means that you increase inflammation. Then you have little chinks in the armor. One of my good friends, Tom O'Brien, talks about it is like little holes in the cheesecloth, right? So if you're straining stuff, it gets through. So you're getting stuff through that then starts to inflame your gut. Okay, so you start to inflame the gut, and then let's say little pieces of bacteria or little pieces of stool. We're not talking about big chunks of stuff here. Little pieces, they start inflammation. Well, they then go into the blood and they travel to other organs. Guess what they go to? They go to the blood-brain barrier. Your brain is very, very selective. It's not social at all. It doesn't want anything from the blood getting in the brain. Why? Because it knows once inflammation begins in the brain, it's going to be a problem. So now, remember, the stuff that gets through the wall, they're very irritating. They're pro-inflammatory. They cause all your inflammatory cells. And I call them like your army, your navy of the body, right? They all get activated. And then that activation goes to the brain. And I talked about this relentless inflammation. So it's not just once in a while, but when you have this group of bad bacteria and the inflammation in your gut, it's relentless.
Never takes a break.
Correct.
It's
And I
constant.
talked about it as the bombing of Constantinople, which is an example in history. But basically, you are bombing that blood-brain barrier. Eventually, it gives, and then these bad pieces of bacteria or inflammatory mediators go into your brain and then start inflaming the brain. Little in the beginning, no big deal, but then as it gets worse, you get diseases like this. So people would think, well, it's Alzheimer's. You just getting old, honey.
Well, I was going to ask, I'm sure you're here to tell us what we're going to do about it.
Well, I will, but before that, Cal, I mean, you know this. Well, he just getting old, and that's just a consequence of age, right?
Yeah.
And you think that it's
But 63.
63 for him,
60s and-
but even if you're 70, I mean, there was a time when 70 is time to call it quits. There are certain parts of the world that they don't do colonoscopies after the age of 75. Did you know that?
Our political leaders are in their late 70s, early
I know.
80s.
That is a whole different story, right? So people
I
are
opened
debating
that can
about
of
that.
worms,
But I'll
didn't I?
tell you this is that people thought it was, and I hate this word. If you're watching, I hate this word, inevitable. They act as if you got Alzheimer's, and some people even called it old timers, right? Maybe people still mispronounce it, old timers. It is not old timers. It is not inevitable. It is preventable to me, right? So if you can then stop it in the gut. This is the beautiful thing about talking about gut health. If you can stop it years before you start seeing signs of it, years before you're putting, carrots where they're not supposed to, or you're putting things in your fingers that you're not supposed to, or doing things that are abnormal. To me, I offer folks who are watching that you can make those changes even decades before. And that's the key. Even if you have Alzheimer's, if you're diagnosed with it or your family member, changing your gut health will help to prevent, the progression
Well, I
or
even
getting worse.
feel like as we raise our children, I mean, we're really also trying to teach people and our kids with their YouTube channel, trying to teach kids that eating healthy is cool.
Should we plug them? Yes, the
Yeah,
Nandi Boys.
the Nandi
Watch it.
Boys YouTube
Wherever
channel.
you can get YouTube, which is
They're
everywhere.
making being healthy fun.
That's
They're
right.
talking about food swaps.
But you're talking about starting early, right?
start early.
Because it's hard to unlearn habits. And that's the thing. Because a lot of my patients, I ask them to do something, and it's like 50 years of doing something. And they'll do it, right? But it's harder. But if you start off by saying, hey, you know what? Have fermented foods, have these really great healthy patterns, I think that really helps. So I think that's, you're right. You start off early. But
So I was
love the
going to
fact.
ask you about the dietary changes or what.
Yeah, I go back to my 5 pillars, right? So I go back to my 5 pillars. If you were watching earlier, the 5 pillars are purposeful living, right? Movement, nutrition, not a diet, but nutrition, and then spirituality and community. So if I look
Can
at all
we
those.
talk about purpose for a second? Because I feel like with this one or with food, it's like making up your mind that you are going to make the right decision.
love how you
That
said
is
that.
your purpose. It's
Exactly.
like my purpose is, every once in a while I'll have a piece of birthday cake because we're celebrating. But for the most part, I am eating with mindfulness. That is my purpose, to live healthy and raise my family as healthy. I'm going to make the commitment to eat at home. I'm going to make the commitment to shop smart with my groceries.
And so you're seeing, right, her passion, and that's why we're successful as a family to accomplish this. You can't do it without having, folks that are really, really committed to doing it. So
Well, that's a good point, because you got sometimes couples that one person's like, I want to go through the drive-through, and the other one's like, oh my gosh, where are my
Right.
Whole Foods? You know what I mean?
I write in the book actually that you should probably not eat out more than once a week, and people are like, are you kidding me? You're nuts, right? I'm not, because the restaurants are not here
Yeah.
for your gut health. They're here to make
We are
money.
going to talk about this at length
We're
in
here to make
episode
money.
7. But yes,
Yeah, we're here to make money. So I think that it's important to make that. So let me go back to purposeful living. So you have to have a reason to do it. If you don't have a reason, it sucks, because I hate doing it. I don't want to eat that. I don't understand why.
You have to make up your mind.
Correct. And the why is important. When you have the why, the how becomes easy. So that's what purpose gives you. So if you have purpose in living a joyful, healthy life, you start with, hey, what am I going to do? And to me, the most powerful and obvious thing is food, as you alluded to. Food and not a diet. I believe in having a nutrition plan because it gives you flexibility, right? Because there are an array of foods that you can have. So what can you have?
A diet seems like short term. It's a life.
It's a synonym for failure, right?
Yeah.
Ain't nobody has been able to ever sustain a diet, right, for more than a couple months or 3 months. And I think the most successful has been, what do you think? The what is the one that you call calorie count all the time? And
Weight Watchers.
Yeah, Weight Watchers is the only one that I think people have been somewhat successful, but even that, it fails. So what can you do with your diet? I think, but pre and probiotics. So what are prebiotics? We talked about this. They're the fiber, the food for the bugs. So have a lot of fruits and vegetables. Pick from an array, of colors. So don't eat the same thing every day. So anything that has fiber is good food. So even whole grains. So that's the first one. And then probiotics, if you can have, which means fermented foods, yogurt, right? Sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, tempeh. There's so many foods. And so people come and tell me, well, I can't do that. You can find something, guys. You can find something that you're going to like because every culture has it, right?
That's right.
So I remember when I went on Tamarind Hall, which the one that I talked about, the drink
Kefir.
no, not kefir. It was
Kombucha.
It'll come to me. No, it's this really sexy kind of Caribbean sounding one.
Oh yeah.
Tepache.
Tepache. That's
So,
right.
you guys should look this
They
up.
loved that.
Tepache.
And even Tamarind was like, we should have given the audience tepache because we got him in kombucha or
It
something.
tasted great.
That's right.
So again, we digress, but the key is that you will be able to find something you like, but you have to be, ready to experiment a little bit. So have that as well. And then I feel like you should avoid processed foods as much as possible. So I don't tell my patients this, anything in a box or a can, try to avoid.
Yeah.
And do the unthinkable. And the unthinkable is this: discover your kitchen. Get in there, right? Not just have a cup of coffee and be cool and talk to your friends, but also the community portion when you go to the kitchen, when Callie and I cook, or your kids and you cook. Even if you're not married, even friends coming over, it's a communal event. We talked about the Rosetta effect. When you live in a supportive community, you decrease the stressors, and that changes the whole picture of inflammation.
Plus, it makes life fun.
It does, but when it comes down to the gut, it also decreases inflammation, decreases cortisol, helps your microbiome, helps your gut wall. So that's why it's so important to have community. And then spirituality. To me, when I cook, I'll tell you, it is a very creative, kind of a spiritual thing for me.
You should see what he puts in his omelets. Hummus, all the hot sauces. But he gets so excited about in the store. So we're not huge cheese eaters. We don't eat a lot. But they have these tiny little high-end cheeses like are for sale.
Less than $5, just so you know.
Yeah. They're cheap. They're little
tiny
but they're
things.
really high-end cheeses. And he'll be like, oh, I got...
Such
Give
and
me an
such.
example. I don't even remember.
I don't even remember,
But he
but
puts all these crazy
unpronounceable
little
stuff.
cheeses in there and maybe hummus and...
Again, and that points to this, right? We talk about healthy living, but it's also a moderation, right? So at 80-20 or 90-10. And what that means is that 80% of the time, you kind of do everything, as well as you can. But 20%, 10 to 20%, you've got to be able to live. So we do that as well. But to me, cooking with your family, just like walking in the garden is spirituality. So what can we do? We're back to Alzheimer's and looking at gut health. These are the things that you can do that changes the equation. So when you go to places like India, Alzheimer's is the lowest incidence probably in the world.
All those
Why is that?
spices and all that fresh food.
Like we haven't talked about
definitely
that.
cooking.
Turmeric, cumin, all that, those fresh ginger and garlic, it all helps. Ginger,
And it
garlic,
takes so
right?
much pride in the way they prepare the food.
It takes time though.
It
I will
is
not.
some work.
I ain't lying here. You can't do it in 5 minutes because we are a fast food
But
society.
you know what? We are doing a recipe that is really, really, really quick.
But there's a way you can do this to be able to get not only delicious meals, but help your gut. So I think it's super
So
important to
you
talk
talked about
that.
pre-products, probiotics, and eating those. What about supplementing? What are your thoughts?
I think it's fine. It's important to know where it's sourced, right? If you don't know who makes it. You've got to spend some time looking at the label. Is it manufactured in the U.S. or abroad? And again, I'm not poo-pooing abroad, but you've got to know that some places, who knows what kind of quality standards they have. So I think taking supplements, probiotic supplements, if you are taking probiotic supplements, make sure they have prebiotics in them too. It's super important because remember, you have a trillion member army in your gut. And then if you have a couple billion, probiotics, that's like, fill in the blank in the wind. It's kind of like just a small, tiny bit of your GI universe or gastrointestinal
Well, you spent
universe.
a lot of time and energy developing your probiotic.
I did it. Yeah, we spent a whole year, and I'll again, shameless plug. It's called Mindbiotic, but it's not as important as if it's our product. But we put a prebiotic in it, we put a probiotic in it, and we also put in an adaptogen and something that helps your brain. But more importantly, if you get a supplement with the probiotic, make sure that has a prebiotic. I think it's important. And then another term that lots of people say they get confused: postbiotics. Right? Postbiotics are the products that are created by the bugs that help you. So one of those is serotonin. Another one is short chain fatty acids that can really help your gut. So these are all important things that you can do.
What about fasting?
Intermittent fasting, we do it. I like to do it an easy way. So what happens is that if you eat an early dinner, let's say you eat 6, right? And then you don't eat until lunch the next day. That's 18 hours. But what's beautiful about it is that you're fasting when you're sleeping, which is great.
You're not
right?
suffering.
You're not, quote unquote, suffering because you're not thinking about it, right? So I think it's an easy way to do it. Intermittent fasting has been shown to be able to help your microbiome. Extreme fasting, though, has been recently shown that it can possibly increase the rates of some types of diseases. So what I'm talking about, people who are fasting for 24 plus hours straight. I think what happens is that your stress level, your body doesn't know you're doing this out of your own will. It feels like you're starving. So then it goes into the fight or flight survival mode. And I think you're getting more stressors. So there's been now some recent evidence that extreme fasting is not great. But the intermittent fasting, I think it's great for gut health as one of the techniques that we can do.
And you talk about a few recipes in your book. You have a whole section that says recipes for Alzheimer's disease, recipes for stroke, recipes for Parkinson's. What kind of foods are you highlighting?
We all, the Nandi family, be loving salmon.
Yeah, that's
right. We love salmon.
We love it.
And salmon has what? Omega-3? Fatty acids. So it's incredible for gut health. It's incredible to help inflammation. Any leafy greens that you can have. I love putting the recipes.
I love salad.
Yep, and I like smoothies that have berries in them. I love berries. I think they're such awesome fruits, and you can put whatever berries you like. Right?
He has berries, for the record. What he eats every day, every morning. Well, he has his coffee in the morning. Then he has a banana. Maybe 2 hours later, right?
Prebiotics banana, by the way.
Yeah, like 2 hours later. Then later he takes a little, and we'll show you this. He takes the small Faye Greek yogurt that's organic or non-GMO.
Instead of saying Feiji.
Faye.
You're such a good pronouncer.
That's a plug.
Are
We
you
don't
Greek?
even, no relationship with Faye. Maybe we should call them
Shameless plug.
But anyway, the
Number 7.
berries. And then he takes the berries. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries. Those are the main 4. And he eats them quick because, typically those things can spoil in the fridge.
I call them phytonutrients. I tell our kids, phytonutrients. The one thing that is such a misnomer, right? My patients go, well, if I start eating all the vegetables, Dr. Nandi, I will not get the protein I need. And it's like, no, you get all your nutrients and there are vegetable sources of protein.
Yes.
We eat dal, which are lentils every day. Broccoli has
we're gonna
proteins.
make that for you guys.
I mean, there's so many sources of protein, but a huge misnomer is that you will wither away if you have a plant-based
Not
diet.
true.
But you asked about that, and so we make smoothies from berries, and I love that because you have enough good protein and also the phytonutrients and the antioxidants that you need. And that's a simple thing you can do every day. If you just start off your day with that, I think it'll be fantastic. Those are some of the recipes we have, and I think we'll be cooking later too.
The Mediterranean diet. Yeah, we're gonna cook that. Curry.
Yeah, I know. I lied again, right? So I said diet's a bad word. I'll tell you, the Mediterranean diet is not bad. It's really not an official diet because it's a food plan. So for those of you who've never tried the Mediterranean diet, it's mostly fruits and vegetables, and then very little red meat, some fish, and I think it's the best food plan we've seen around the world to increase longevity, decrease inflammation, and also prevent diseases, these neurodegenerative diseases. So in English, the neurodegenerative diseases are like diseases like Alzheimer's, because you're degenerating, killing brain cells by inflaming them. And so when you have something like the Mediterranean diet, it really helps. And anybody, you can just look it up, and there are multiple forms of it. What I love about it, Callie, is that it's flexible.
Yeah.
I hate it, and we talk about this, right? When it's inflexible and you put people in a box, that's when it fails.
It's
Wouldn't
a
you
failure.
agree?
Yeah, that's when you fail.
Even our kids, we tell them that you have a kind of a diverse array of things to choose from, right? So if you look typically behind us, there are oranges, there's apples, you could have plums and berries. You have to give them a diverse array because, for example, Sean will love apples, but he may not like something else.
That's
and
right.
Partha may like, something more. You just have to give him
But we
choices.
try to give them the color. We try to give them all the colors of the rainbow.
But again, the concept is that you don't, you get all these folks that say you have to do this and they prescribe it. For some people, that's what they need, but for most people, they need flexibility. Flexibility, but success in that flexibility.
And meet people where they are.
100%.
Epigenetics, fascinating. Let's dig into epigenetics. So cool.
I like it because, this is not stuff we were taught in medical school. What I love about medicine, and I think it's William Osler. You probably have not heard of him, but we learned about when we were in medical school. He was the father of medicine. He said medicine is such that you can still do it and not read anything, and you can do it and practice so frequently. But it's amazing how badly you can practice medicine if you don't read. If you don't read
keep
or
up.
keep
My
up,
gosh, yeah.
you wouldn't even. I've never even heard of epigenetics because it's literally in the last decade that it's come to the forefront. And what we're talking about, that there are parts of the gene that we felt were not expressed or were not. Remember, genes produce proteins, and those proteins and the substances are the things that actually make living creatures, right? You make cells and you create products. So there are parts of the genes forever we said, that's weird. Whoever made this plan must have just been out to lunch because they got these parts of genes that are useless and don't do anything. Now we're seeing that you can activate those parts of genes by changing, for example, your behavior, changing how you eat, changing the stress patterns in your life, and even some supplements. So you are basically unmasking some protections that you had, who knows, thousands of years ago, that now we're discovering if you can then activate those, and we're just learning about this, if you can take those parts of genes that would seem like if they were just asleep and not doing anything, they activate and they can protect you. And why this is so important is because we can then counteract some of those hereditary problems we talk about, whether it's cancer, whether it's autoimmune disease, whether it's brain diseases or neurodegenerative diseases. So now we can counteract that. And the field of epigenetics is so important to understand because if we can understand, hey, these are the factors that can turn on these genes, oh my gosh, it's ball game. It's like, the heavens open up because then you now have a way to be able to use your own body's protection, your own body's mechanisms of disease prevention, for your benefit.
What about, we talked a little bit about genetics. Is there anything else we have to cover there about
it's huge.
genetics?
I mean, we are not here to downplay the importance of genetics. But what I used to see when I was in medical school was more about this, it's just your destiny, right? That, you guys know this, like my aunt had this or my dad had this, so I'm just screwed and I'm going to have it. And so what we talk about is, being a health hero. What that means is that you take your health and the power of your health in your own hands.
That's
and
right.
You can change it, right? They used to think about there are parts of gene they thought were wasted. Like so genes, remember, so genes make protein. Proteins make stuff in the body, and that's what creates your health or disease. So imagine there are parts of gene that were not being transcribed, which means that wasn't even being used to make proteins. Now we know epigenetics. So that's a fancy word saying that, hey, by the way, if you have more community, more spirituality, or a different type of food that you take, you can activate these genes that have been dormant. And when you activate those genes, you can actually change the equation for your health. It's like a field that's just bursting. So you may have a genetic predisposition, or your family may have a certain type of disease, but now by what you do with your food, with your behavior, even moving, right, you can actually activate certain parts of your genome that go whack whack and fight and neutralize that increased incidence of a disease. To me, that's exciting. To me, you take the power back of your health. Again, you're absolutely right about the purpose, because when you know that, you feel like a badass, right? You feel like, okay, I got this and I'm ready to go, and ready to go every day. So when we get out of bed, most days, right, 90% of the time, we jump out of bed because we know we are making an impact in people's lives and in our own lives. And you can do that too. It's just small changes, right? Small changes. We talk about that. And we talked about this. And when we talked about, like, what are we going to talk about with this episode? We talked about that, right? Small changes instead of gigantic ones, right? And you said it well, right? You said that if you give people these mountains to climb, they're like, I'm good. I'm good. But if you give them small steps, but done consistently, it can make...
It's just like making that one choice over and over and over again. Grabbing the apple instead of mac and cheese. Going home and cooking something versus going through a drive-through.
It's not a coincidence that places in the world, right, they call them blue zones, that follow these tips that I'm talking about have very little incidence of diseases like Alzheimer's, and they're living to 100. We're living longer, but we're living longer in a nursing home with tubes coming out. Is that how you want to live? Right? That's the choice you make. And you talk about purposeful living. You don't want to just say, I'm 90, but I can barely move, or somebody's kind of wiping me every single day.
Yeah, we're not talking nursing home years here. Yeah. We're talking vibrant, healthy, happy, doing your cruises to Alaska and Hawaii into your 80s and 90s.
Right, exactly. And if you can't cruise, you can at least, cruise in your mobile down Woodward Avenue.
So, of course, you're talking in the book about how we can make these lifestyle changes to prevent Alzheimer's disease and things in the future. What about, how is it going to affect us right now?
That's a great question. So, I do talks about this. So this is one of my keynotes is that how do you optimize your brain function, right? To get the best out of your brain, so reduce brain fog, stay focused. And so people take these ice baths. You've heard of it? Like executives, they wake up in the morning and plunge themselves into a bucket of ice.
Not my favorite thing to do.
Laugh, no. But it like invigorates you. To me, when you do the things we're talking about and invigorate gut health, guess what happens, right? You are more productive. You are a better worker. You're a better lover. You're a better student. All these things that you can do because what you're now doing is you're optimizing your brain health. We know that for example, the postbiotics, the stuff that your microbiome produces, right? It is optimized when your gut is healthy. So neurotransmitters like serotonin, your feel good, and also you're kind of like, I want to go do something hormone. Your stuff like GABA. So these are substances that are created. So when you create them, they also help your brain, and you basically immediately get an effect. And what does immediately mean, right? So within a couple weeks, you'll see like you're kind of like the brain fog is lifted, your attention span is better,
nice.
And you're able to do the things, and your mind is not wandering as much. And I think using the 5 pillars of purposeful living, of movement, of nutrition, of especially also using spirituality, because that focuses you. So there's some obviously long-term benefits, preventative, and even people who have diseases like Alzheimer's, it helps them to cope. But man, even if you don't have anything going on that's a disease state, it helps you to be able to optimize your brain and your ability to be able to perform right now.
So bottom line, what are your biggest takeaways for gut health for preventing Alzheimer's?
I think we talked about it, but I think you start off small. So let's say do one thing, right? Maybe eat some walnuts instead of chips. Just something simple like that. But you can use any of the 5 pillars and start with one act. And you can do that every day. That's what I would start. And then the other thing is that understand that you have the power to change. If you don't believe that you have any power to change the equation in diseases of the mind or any part of your body, I think you will not be successful.
So we're going to head over to the kitchen here shortly, but what can we look forward to in the next episode?
So I think that another devastating disease that people have is Parkinson's. And we've got to talk about Parkinson's and what we can do about it and the connection between gut health and Parkinson's. So one thing we'll preview is that the stuff that you see in the brain for Parkinson's, we call them Lewy bodies, you actually can see them in the gut before. And to me, the exciting thing is how can we change that equation? So I think it's going to be a very, very exciting and interesting episode to talk about.
Hey there, we're back and now we're in the kitchen. So we are cooking some delicious chicken coconut curry that is fantastic for your brain health and especially Alzheimer's.
I just love being in the kitchen because, it's just you get the time together. Right now we're in front of all you guys, but typically when we're cooking with our family, even when we're together, even before we had kids, we enjoyed that. But this is awesome. So I love being in the kitchen and we're talking about Alzheimer's and so we're making this amazing dish. So
the thing about this dish is that Partha has made it really easy for you at home. So if anyone thinks, I can't make Indian food, it's so difficult, or...
It is very easy.
It is very easy. So let's get started. Okay, so this is called chicken coconut curry, and you can find the recipe right in the book. And it just starts with a slow cooker, which 90% of America has that, so that's nice. And
we use three. Go ahead.
Three breasts of chicken. That's all.
And the nice thing is that you take the skin off. Remember, if you put the skin on the chicken, the health benefits of having something like this really disappears. It's almost as bad as eating, I guess, something like red meat with lots of the fat on. So try to take the fat off. Some people still use the chicken with the fat, so it's important to let people know. But this is one of our go-tos. So please go ahead.
Talk to them a little bit about curry powder. So this is only 2 tablespoons of curry powder, and there is a recipe in the book that you can...
And I wish you guys could smell it. If you guys could smell it, smell-o-vision.
Actually, our whole house
It's delicious.
But you can make the mixture at home, but this one's an easy way for you working families to make it nice and easy.
So turmeric.
Store-bought curry powder.
Turmeric, and then cumin and coriander. And what I love about this, especially for folks with Alzheimer's, is turmeric with curcumin has, factors, anti-inflammatory factors for the gut as well as the brain. So it's nice. Both the cumin and the turmeric have those anti-inflammatory factors. And we know, but this is very cool, that turmeric actually crosses the blood-brain barrier to be able to affect the inflammation in the brain. So it's a triple whammy. So you got the cumin and then the turmeric and the curcumin that's in there, and it's affecting your gut health and your brain health. So it's awesome.
Sweet. Then we just have a cup of golden raisins. So easy. This is so hard. Anyone can do it. Nice
source of making it sweet, right? Without having like simple sugars. Raisins are nice because they're complex, a little bit more fiber. So if you want that little sweet taste to it, instead of adding sugar, add this so you can get the sugar and the fiber along with it. So that's nice.
Then we just take a can of organic coconut milk. For coconut milk, we really like this brand, Thai Chicken Organic. It's really thick and hearty, and so that's one we typically choose. And delicious. It's nice and thick.
It tastes awesome. That's why we like it also. Yeah. And it's what's nice about this is, and we talked about this a little bit, that this has some factors that can help Alzheimer's. It's good fat. You don't want to have a ton of it, but if you can have moderate amounts, this is really good. It's one of the good fats that you can have, and it also has anti-inflammatory factors. And it's yummy and it's creamy. It gives you that creamy texture that you love, without having to add a ton of oil.
That's right. Then you just need a cup and a half of chicken stock, so that's nice and easy too. We get organic.
Yeah, we got the organic kind. It's nice, because you want to be able to get organic, and if you can, pasture-raised, at least cage-free if you can. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get that. If you're a vegetarian, right? People who are vegetarian that are watching or listening, you can add, vegetable broth, and you can easily put chickpeas instead of the chicken or potatoes. So there's ways to be able to make this delicious and nutritious too.
Chickpea with potatoes is delicious as well.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is just a cup of cashews.
That's
you can
awesome.
use peanuts as well.
These are rich in omega-3s. Remember, these omega-3s are also very beneficial for patients or folks that are interested in treating or preventing Alzheimer's. So you've got a pretty simple dish, but you can make easily, and it's going to be delicious. So we're going to.
The only other thing you could do is if you wanted to step up the complexity, you can add a little ginger, you can add a little garlic, you can add some potatoes. Maybe some peas at the very end.
Add those pre-fibers, so you can do that. We made it simple for our recipe. This is in our book, Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain. We put this recipe in. But if you can always add and make it your own, a little bit. You can put some potatoes. Our son, Partha, who was here just a minute ago in our kitchen, but now he's disappeared like always. Our kids just disappear.
Too boring.
But he was there, and no, I just think he had something else to do. But he loves potatoes. Sometimes we put potatoes in there. Sometimes we put the ginger and onion. But this will work exceptionally well.
Okay, so no one can complain that they can't make an Indian dish. This was super simple. You just put this on slow cooker for a couple hours, and you're good to go.
And remember,
so I'll show it to you.
And remember that before you do that, remember India is one of the countries that has the lowest incidence of Alzheimer's. So we love Indian recipes because of the spices, the turmeric, the curcumin, because there's something there in the Indian culture that's allowing that country to not have the incidence of Alzheimer's that others are having. So it's really interesting to emulate that. So again, it's easy to make, but it's also packed full of stuff that will be able to help you to prevent Alzheimer's, in our opinion.
Okay, with a little TV magic, we pre-made this chicken dish for you. Now, I didn't say it always looked the prettiest, but it's gonna taste delicious and it smells delicious here. So I will give you a little bit. It looked like I pulled out spoons like I was feeding one of the children, but let me get some. And then I'll give you some of this. And then I'm also we're feeding our crew here today. So
how about me?
We're feeding you.
Some Joel.
We're feeding you. Tell them about Joel.
Well, Joel is the gravy. It's the Bengali word, which is the part of the world, India, that I'm from. It's called Joel. I love the gravy. So
let me give you some of
Can I eat or no?
Yeah, let me give you a little.
What's the garnish?
Cilantro.
And the onion.
A little onion. And you can also certainly add some more cashews. Go ahead.
Drum roll or no?
I'll eat off your plate so that I can leave more for the team.
Really good.
So easy, so
That's
delicious.
Really good,
so good for you.
Not just TV good, this is really good.
It tastes delicious.
People go, oh, it's delicious, but it tastes terrible.
And I don't want to hear any of you saying it's
This is
hard.
very good.
No way, it's doable. Cheers.
Cheers.
Make sure you never miss an episode by following on Apple Podcasts or subscribing wherever you listen.
And if you want to learn more, get a copy of my book, also titled Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain, available everywhere books are sold, October 1st.